So glad to be here.
Including the mustache, which was a popular fixture. So in the last State of the Union address, when Obama was addressing the country, one of the numbers that he cited was that for each dollar that you invest in early child's development from 0 to 3, you recoup $7 across their entire lifetime in terms of more taxes paid, better employment, better economic security, less reliance on public services. So one thing the Affordable Care Act, better known as Obamacare, provided is $1.5 billion for home visitation programs over the 5 years after its passage. So it provided funding, but also in a very kind of helpful gesture, it required home visitation programs to be demonstrating evidence of their effectiveness.
What's a home visitation program?
So the home visitation program that we worked with is the Nurse-Family Partnership. So there are 13 evidence-based models across the country. NFP is one of them. In particular, it targets at-risk mothers, which not all do. It targets first-time mothers, which not all do. And what it does is it provides a nurse that will follow a mother from 12 to 28 weeks of gestation all the way until the child is 2 years old. This is a program that has been studied even before it was implemented on a large scale. There was a randomized controlled trial in the 70s, one in the 80s, one in the 90s, all with different populations. There was all initiated by a researcher, and in the mid-90s they went to scale. And so right now they exist in 42 different states in the nation. They're one of the 13 evidence-based models. But here's the difference in terms of an evaluation climate. When you're doing a randomized controlled trial, it's expensive. It is kind of this gold standard for statistical evidence.
Can you explain what a trial is?
Yeah, so a randomized controlled trial in social services is it's just a means of experimentation. So if I have a job training program and I look at people who do and don't go to the job training program, and the people who do go to the job training program do better, well, do I know whether it was the job training program itself, or the types of people who go to job training are the ones who are more likely to be more organized to get jobs. So the trials that were run for Nurse-Family Partnership several decades ago had randomized mothers in terms of, for those who applied, said, we can accept you, we cannot accept you, and then they were tracked, actually into adulthood for the children who participated. Those studies are still ongoing because they're still alive.
Yeah, so it's the best way of measuring whether something has an impact or not. You don't really know unless you do it random. Otherwise, it might just be that the people, like he said, the people showing up to the job training program are the folks who are most motivated. So that might not be the case, but you just don't know unless you do a randomized controlled trial.
Right. But when you're inside the operations of a program and you want to be monitoring the ongoing effectiveness, it's not ethical, it's not meeting your goals to continue to randomize all of these mothers at a national scale. So what they needed was to provide evidence that met like the highest possible standard of evidence for Congress to continually to evaluate whether the programs were being productive. Trying to remember what the next slide is. Okay, yeah. Well, so there are a number of outcomes that we're assisting Nurse-Family Partnership with evaluating. They were doing low birth weight, breastfeeding, child's development, a mother's educational attainment, mother's employment. So this is an example of one of the outcomes.
Because the goal of actually putting nurses with first-time mothers is to make sure that they have good pregnancies, to make sure that the kids are healthy when they're really young, and then to make sure that the families are stable and the mothers can find employment and so on. So it's a way of kind of like making sure the kid starts off on the right foot and then making sure the family does well over time. And so to measure whether that actually happens, you have to look at specific things like vaccination rates, et cetera.
Yeah. So here's the complication is at this point when we're outside of a randomized controlled trial where we decide all the data that we want to collect, the way that Nurse Family operates is they have a lot of detailed information on the mothers that they serve, but they don't have information about mothers they don't serve. So if you want to make a comparison, which says like these are how mothers fare when we serve them, versus how they might have done in the absence of that service, you need a comparison population. So for vaccination rates, we developed the National Immunization Survey data, and when you take a look at the general population, you will see up-to-date vaccination rates from 75% to about 90%.
The x-axis on the bottom there is months since birth. So what you're seeing is what percentage of the people of the kids, right? what percentage of kids in the general population have their shots up to date? Is that pretty much what it is?
That's right. But the nurse family partnership does not seek to serve the average mother from the international population. In particular, it's a disadvantaged economically. The mothers that they serve are generally lower earning. They're more likely to be single and to have less stable home environments. So what we did was we are the social science frequentists, for what it's worth. So what we used was a combination across different outcomes, propensity score matching and course exact matching, to be able to identify the subset of mothers in the general population that were demographically equivalent to the mothers that were served by nurse family partnership. And so when you take a look at the statistics for the matched, the demographically matched population of nurse family partnership, you see that they have lower, approximately 5 to 15% lower immunization rates than the general population. And when you take a look at
so those are the moms who are similar to NFP moms, but didn't actually go into the program.
That's right. And if you take a look at nurse family partnership mothers, they are almost, they're very close to 100% up to date on immunizations. So if you did a naive comparison, you would see that there are large effects from nurse family partnership relative to the general population. But when you actually take a look at the matched population, the kind of naive instinct in terms of evaluation is much more pessimistic. It's understating the large effect that they're having. So especially when there are $1.5 billion at stake, there's going to be an early review of this provision for home visitation funding. A nurse family partnership is looking to provide them evidence to show how optimistic the outcomes are. Oh, questions?